Mexico is facing a quiet, massive macroeconomic deficit. Currently, the country cannot produce enough food to feed its own livestock. This is a stacked bar chart mapping domestic production against foreign reliance. Mexico imports 17 million tons of yellow corn every year. That requires spending over $6 billion annually just to maintain the supply chain. Almost none of that grain goes to human consumption. The vast majority is used entirely on feeding animals, keeping the nation's cattle, the domestic pigs, and poultry alive. This means the entire domestic protein supply chain is dependent on shipping in an expensive, foreign commodity. Attempting to close this gap by planting more local corn forces growers into a cycle of high operating expenses. Corn is not native to many of these regions, meaning forcing it to grow requires constant, heavy spending. It requires perfectly rich soil, synthetic fertilizers every year, chemical pesticides to fight off local insects, and massive amounts of water. This graph illustrates the core problem for growers in regions like Campeche. Even with these massive recurring costs, the yield per hectare remains stagnant. Traditional row farming traps the producer in a low-margin model, high annual costs for low annual returns. Changing the math requires moving away from traditional row crops and toward a native biological asset, the Ramón tree, or Brosimum allicastrum. The seed of the Ramón tree is chemically superior to both corn and soy as a forage material. It contains higher concentrations of protein, zinc, iron, and the essential amino acid tryptophan. A mature hectare of Ramón trees produces up to 50 tons of seed annually, 10 times the historic output of local corn. Priced at its $360 baseline, that yield multiplies into a gross revenue of $18,000 per hectare. While the math for corn must be reset from zero every planting season, a Ramón tree is a permanent asset that maintains its productive cycle for over 150 years. Because it is a native species, it requires no enriched soil. After year 2, the tree demands no watering, no fertilizers, and no pesticides. By turning a recurring annual expense into a permanent, high-yield asset requiring zero maintenance, the Ramón tree changes the agricultural equation. If the financial returns are this high and the maintenance is this low, why isn't this model already universally adopted? The answer is the primary risk of forestry investments, planting from seed. You face a high mortality rate for young saplings and a long, unprofitable wait for maturity. Castame Reforesta has designed a strategic approach to eliminate that biological waiting period. They maintain a massive, pre-grown inventory of robust saplings. These trees are far past the vulnerable nursery phase and are already loaded for immediate deployment. Planting saplings already over 2 meters tall guarantees high survival rates in the field. This bypasses early mortality risk, advancing profitability by 2 full years. Setting this up requires an upfront capital expenditure. The total turnkey setup cost, including the mature saplings, labor, and irrigation infrastructure, comes to 154,360 pesos per hectare. By allocating capital smartly at the beginning, an investor removes the biological risk from the asset's most vulnerable phase. That $18,000 figure represents the floor of this asset. That is the price for raw animal forage. The true revenue potential increases when you shift focus from livestock to humans, processing the seed into functional flour. There is growing global demand for premium, gluten-free, vegan baking ingredients and high-protein supplements. While raw seed sells for $360 a ton, wholesale functional Ramón flour commands $3,500 per ton on the business-to-business market. That pricing aligns with other established health commodities, like quinoa and teff, validating the market demand. Processing the raw asset enables a 10x price multiplier, shifting the operation from basic agriculture into the premium ingredient sector. This area chart projects the maximum revenue potential. By processing the harvest of a mature hectare, that $18,000 baseline scales upward, reaching a gross revenue ceiling of $175,000. This revenue is generated from an asset that, once established, requires almost zero operational effort or chemical input to maintain year after year. The $175,000 ceiling demonstrates the result of a simple shift in strategy, moving away from high-maintenance seasonal crops and toward permanent native assets that align biology with industrial scale.